What's good, everyone? This is Dr. Nee Darko. Make sure you hit the subscribe button below so that you're always up to date on the new uploads as well as alerts on this show. The other thing that you can do to help build this community is make sure you leave a comment below. Let us know what you like, what you don't like about the show, and ultimately, let us know who's winning these arguments, because I need to know that I'm beating Renee in these debates. Run the tape. See, you are mentioning something that I wanted to ask you about, which is you're dividing purpose into two things. Mm-hmm. And I found it really interesting. Like I said, guys, I haven't gotten a chance to read this book, but I know how to scour. And this is something that I'm very interested in. And sometimes I feel like people come into our lives for certain reasons, right? Like I came in just to be like, look, man, I need to get these keys done. And part of me was going to be like, come on, like, can you just get my keys done? Mm-hmm. And I've started realizing as he's taking his time to do my keys, there are other people who needed to get their keys done also. And I started thinking, I was like, rather than rush this guy, I started letting other people through. Like, hey, how many keys do you have to get done? 1, 2, and I asked his name was John. I was like, Mr. John, like, can you just let these folks go and we can continue our conversation afterwards? And he would just do their keys real quick, move on. And then we would continue our conversation. That's how it became like an hour thing. Mm-hmm. It's almost like I needed, after like 10 minutes of this, it's like, wait, I need this. This is like almost like therapy for me now, right? Yeah. So there was like several people who I just like let them pass through, and then we continued our conversation. And he told me everything about how he met his wife, to, the part of, where he grew up and where he lived and spent several years, decades and so forth, and what happened afterwards. But it was a very fulfilling conversation. It's very interesting. This guy knows himself very well. He says, what did he say? He's very OCD. He said it. He's like, I'm a very OCD, anal retentive type person. So when I make your keys, I have to make sure that like I clean the residue off the keys so that when I give you the keys, when you open the door, there's nothing blocking. You want to make sure it's a perfect fit. And I have to make sure that I do all the keys first, and then I clean them off before I hand them to you. If I, separate them out, then I'll he went into like details about all these things. And I really started thinking about, I was like, wow, like this is almost like kind of like how I am, right? It's almost like this, I don't know if it's like serendipity or something like that. We're meant to meet, and then I was meant to interview you. Yeah. It's just very interesting.
Well, here's the thing. And let's be real here. Let's set some definitions. This is a long answer. I apologize. But let's set some definitions. Our goal here is to win the game. That's it. Win the game. Mm-hmm. How do you win the game? Happiness. What's happiness? Boy, that's hard to define. When I wrote my first book, Taking Stock, it was built on one main premise, that we should put purpose first before we build our financial framework. And I went to go talk to people about this, market the book. I went to conferences, did public speaking, et cetera. And at the end of my talks, I kept on getting people coming up to me, and they'd be angry. And I give lots of talks, and I almost never find anyone angry at me. And this happened over and over again. And they'd all say the same thing. They'd be like, you're telling me to find my purpose. I don't know what purpose is. I've been searching for it forever. I can't find it. Please stop telling me to find purpose. I don't think there is a purpose. And so I did a deep dive into the literature, and I found what I think is a paradox. Basically, I found that having a sense of purpose in life, that's what the researchers call it, is associated with health, happiness, longevity. Clearly, tons of studies, very obvious. Then I also found studies that show that up to 91% of people at some point in their life have what's called purpose anxiety. This idea of purpose actually makes them depressed and frustrated and even angry. And so how do we explain this paradox? The way I explain it is to say that we get this completely wrong. We think purpose is one thing. It's probably actually two things. And one of those things is probably bad for us. And one of them is probably nurturing. The one that's bad for us, big P purpose, is goal-oriented. It's big. It's audacious. In America, we say, if you can think it, you can build it. So I'm talking about curing cancer, becoming president, being a billionaire. The problem is it's really easy to fail those things. And unless you're the right person at the right time with the right genetics and a bunch of luck, saying all the right things, if you're not all of those, you're probably going to fail. So it's very much all or nothing, and it leaves a lot of us feeling anxious. On the other hand, little P purpose is process-oriented. So it's not worried about the goal. It's like do things that light you up. And because it's process-oriented, it's kind of all or all. There's no way to fail. So it's very abundant. Think about the million things I could do that would light me up. Whereas big P purpose is very scarce, like I either succeed or fail. And so we're looking at how do we become happy? How do we win the game? Well, there have been studies about happiness. And I'll tell you the truth, one of the best studies is the Harvard adult developmental health study. Started in the 1930s, about 700 Harvard students. They interviewed them every other year. Eventually
Say
brought
that
in
again.
the
The Harvard.
Harvard Adult Developmental Health Study.
Okay.
So they
Got
started
it.
with about 700 people, Harvard students. They eventually brought in some family members, then brought in some controls from Boston. They studied them for like 80 years. And they started with interviewing them every 2 years. Eventually
It started in 1938.
Yeah. And eventually they did MRIs, EEGs, blood tests. And at the end of like all these 80 years of study, they asked one simple question: what makes people happy? Okay. And what they found was that it wasn't money, it wasn't status, it wasn't achievements, it wasn't your job, and it wasn't even purpose, which we'll get back to in a moment. What it was interpersonal connections. Your relationships, your community, your connections is the number one most correlated thing with happiness. Notice I said it wasn't purpose, but I also said a little while ago, all these studies show that purpose increases your happiness. Well, I think if we follow little p purpose, this process-oriented purpose, it lights us up. We do things we love doing, and it connects us to other people. So it's a great conduit to interpersonal connections. So let's go back to your guy who's making your keys. He's doing something that he's interested in. He's OCD. He loves the process. He loves the steps, and he's going to clean them up, and he's going to do it exactly right so that when you go home, your key fits in. You don't got to mess with it. You don't got to be like, God darn it, they gave me a bad key. It works for you. That lights him up, and guess what's happening? He's connecting to other people because you see this guy doing something that lights him up, and you kind of want to talk to him. You're willing to take time out of your day, even though you're a really busy guy. You're willing to let other people go in front of you because you see some light there.
Oh, yeah. It's the day after Christmas. Everybody's returning stuff.
And so
I got to go. Yeah.
What's winning the game? Winning the game is practicing little p purpose that connects you to other people, which the Harvard Adult Developmental Health Study tells us interpersonal connections is what's going to make you happy. That's it. That's winning the game. There you go. It isn't big. It isn't audacious. It's not curing cancer. It's not doing all that. It's doing stuff you love that connects you to other people. That's how you win.
So I'm going to share something else about my life. So I took some notes before we started talking because I was very, very much interested in the word purpose from your standpoint. So I was like, let me put my life and think about it. So the best I could do is I have notes here. I could put my life into 3 phases, right? And this is going to be very simple, but it's the truth. So one, there's the chase of becoming a doctor, right?
Right.
That goes up until graduation. So up until graduating from medical school, right? Then there's attaining the goal. So that's residency. So I become a doctor already. That's residency to about 3 to 4 years of practicing on my own, right? Being an attending. And then the third phase is being a Dr. Jordan, no judgment. Everybody listen, no judgment. There's who am I? Right?
Yeah,
and it's these last 10 years, right? And I have notes in here like, so am I supposed to be practicing, like who am I practicing for? Am I practicing for my patients or am I practicing for a big corporate conglomerate? I don't even wear my own logo. Now I have my own logo because I do independent contracting, but you know, like I'm representing something else, someone else at times. Right? So for someone who's reading your book, right? Let's say that's me, right? Like how would you help someone like me find purpose, like meaningful purpose?
So first,
third phase.
First and foremost, you don't find purpose, you build or create it. I think it's a huge mistake everyone makes.
Okay.
Because they're thinking like purpose is something that's going to fall on their head, and either it falls on their head and they live a great life and things are perfect. It's this one big thing, or they miss it completely and they're lost. And so I want to disabuse people of that idea. Purpose is something you build and create. Now, it is true that you have to have some inklings or beckonings, some things that excite you to build purpose around. I call those purpose anchors. And so we do have to connect with what our purpose anchors are. Let me pause that for a moment. Part of the problem with purpose is I think we define it incorrectly. And so colloquially, we think of purpose as our why. Like, what is our purpose? It's the why we do what we do. And when you were just talking about your different phrases, you were kind of talking about the why. I think that's wrong. Purpose isn't our why. That's actually what I would call meaning. Purpose are the actions we do in the present and future that light us up. That's it. Purpose has everything to do with action, and it has everything to do with the present and future. So purpose is what you do on a daily basis, weekly basis, monthly basis that lights you up. It could be big or small. You could have one or many. You could do it for a month, or you could do it for a year. You could do it for your lifetime. And so while you're talking about like winning the game or becoming the doctor, I don't see those things as purpose. Like I look at you and I say, purpose for you is doing a podcast. It is the action you take on a daily basis that lights you up. The problem with looking at it as your why is because then it becomes really high stakes. Like I have to have the right why, and the why has to be big and impactful. And if I get it wrong, everything goes wrong. And before you know it, we're setting these big P purpose goals. Like my why has to be that I improve 1 million people's lives, or my why has to be that I'm the best trauma surgeon ever, or my why has to be that I make $1 billion. And all of a sudden you're getting these big high stakes goals. And the reason why is why feels really weighty. Like my why can't just be something pedestrian. Like I want to do fun things that fill me up.
Jordan, get out of my head.
Your
get
why
out of my
has
head.
to be big. And so here's the difference.
This is like Inception.
So I told you that it's a difference between meaning and purpose. And when you see it as your why, it's actually a meaning problem. And people are like, what do you mean? Meaning and purpose are the same thing. Well, here's what I think. Happiness is made up of two things, meaning and purpose, but meaning and purpose are very different. Remember, I just said purpose is your present and future and is all about action. Well, meaning is about the cognitive way you think about your past, and it's all about thoughts. So it's about your past and it's about your thoughts. In other words, meaning is the stories you tell yourself about yourself. Now, happy people tend to tell themselves heroic stories. Like I had these tough times, I had these traumas, I got through them, and I was enough. And so you feel pretty good now, and you feel like in the present and future, you're going to be fine. So the journey of meaning is a journey of enoughness. Unhappy people tell themselves victim stories about the past. I had these traumas, I had these problems, I was thwarted, I was never enough, and I probably won't be enough in the present and future. So again, meaning is about your past, it's about your thoughts, and it's a journey to enough. And purpose is about your present and future and is all about action. The problem with very goal-oriented, achievement-oriented people is they're struggling with meaning. In other words, the stories they tell themselves about themselves didn't fulfill their sense of enoughness, and so they're stuck in the present and future not feeling enough. Instead of going back and doing therapy and thinking about their sense of meaning, they feel like they can purpose their way to enough. So what they do is they start trying to use purpose to feel good about themselves. But to do that, they have to set these really big, audacious goals. And so you try to purpose your way to enough, and it just doesn't work. You can't purpose your way to enough, and you can't purpose your way to happiness. You've got to have both meaning and purpose. When you have a good sense of meaning and you feel like you were enough in the past, all of a sudden you don't have to prove yourself in the present and future. So you no longer have to hit this big, audacious goal. You can just do stuff that lights you up. And if you doubt what I'm telling you, just look at Elon Musk or Steve Jobs. These are people who've achieved the greatest sense of purpose according to the way we look at them, right? They've made tons of money and they've built amazing things, and yet neither of them looked particularly happy. Steve Jobs didn't look happy when he was alive. Elon Musk doesn't look particularly happy now. Both of them are trying to purpose their way to enough. If I just make more money, if I just have more achievements, I'm going to be happy. Whereas they both probably needed to go back and look at their childhood trauma and work through that and realize they were always enough even before they achieved all these things. And so that's where a lot of people like you are, is they're trying to prove their worthiness through purpose, and it just doesn't work that way.
Jordan, where am I sending my bill to you? Damn.